The ink on the divorce decree was practically a taunt. Daniel Hayes savored the moment, a smug grin plastered across his face as he watched Audrey, his soon-to-be irrelevant ex-wife, walk away, stripped bare. She was exiting his life with nothing but the clothes she wore. He'd bled her dry, or so he thought. The house, the investments, the blissful freedom he craved, all his. From his lawyer's opulent high-rise office, he peered down, half expecting her to pathetically flag down a taxi in the miserable drizzle. But no yellow cab appeared. Instead, a sleek, obsidian chariot, a custom-built Maybach with a price tag north of $20 million, purred to a stop. A uniformed chauffeur, crisp and professional, leaped out and held the door for Audrey. Daniel's breath hitched, a knot forming in his stomach. He knew that car. He recognized the discreet, yet unmistakable, obsidian crest adorning its door. It was the emblem of Damian Blackwood, the enigmatic billionaire who held the power to utterly obliterate him. The meeting was a mere formality, a final, almost ceremonial act in Daniel's ascendance. The room, perched on the 48th floor of the prestigious Pendleton and St. Law offices, was a monument to mahogany paneling, hushed reverence, and generations of inherited wealth. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking panorama of the New York skyline, a jagged, cold, and glittering reflection of Daniel's own soaring ambition. He leaned back in his supple leather chair, radiating an aura of magnanimous triumph. Across from him sat Arthur Pendleton, his lawyer, a man whose professional smile never quite reached the depths of his calculating eyes. And beside Arthur, almost shrinking into the background, was Audrey. "Now, Audrey," Arthur began, his voice dripping with patronizing empathy. "As we've discussed, Daniel has been extraordinarily generous. The settlement of $50,000, considering your lack of direct financial contribution, is a rather significant gesture." Daniel watched her, a flicker of disdain in his eyes. She was wearing that drab, beige dress he'd always loathed. It was intentionally, almost irritatingly, understated, designed to make her fade into the background, a piece of forgettable furniture. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe, unflattering bun, emphasizing the pale, almost ethereal perfection of her oval face. For 10 long years, that face had been his possession, a beautiful, passive, and, he now admitted, increasingly boring ornament. He discovered her toiling away in a dusty little art gallery, a quiet, unassuming girl with a peculiar fondness for obscure painters. He had sculpted her, molded her into the perfect society wife, granting her a life she could only have dreamt of. And how had she repaid him? By existing, by silently occupying space. Now he was upgrading. Isabella was a vibrant, 24-year-old firecracker, a social media influencer whose boundless energy perfectly mirrored his own meteoric rise at Apex Innovations. He was on the verge of closing the Project Oracle deal, a staggering 9-figure acquisition that would cement his legacy, transforming him into a legend. He couldn't be shackled to a ghost of a wife. He needed a partner who radiated light, who amplified his success. "Do you have any questions, Audrey?" Daniel asked, his tone laced with condescending patience. Audrey's gaze, which had been fixed on the polished mahogany table, slowly lifted. Her eyes, a deep, enigmatic gray, met his. She didn't glance at Arthur, didn't seek his approval or validation. She looked directly at Daniel. "No, Daniel," she said, her voice clear and resonant. Not weak, not trembling, just utterly devoid of emotion. "I have no questions." The starkness of her response sent a fleeting shiver down his spine. "Well then." Arthur slid the final document across the table, the crisp paper whispering across the polished surface. "If you'll just sign here, and here." Audrey picked up the heavy, gold-plated pen. Daniel watched her hand, expecting it to tremble, to betray some flicker of emotion. But it was steady, unwavering. She signed her name, Audrey Caroline, her maiden name, a name she hadn't used in a decade. The stroke was fluid, decisive. She slid the paper back across the table, stood, and walked towards the door. She didn't weep. She didn't stage a scene. She didn't plead or hurl insults. She simply turned, walked to the door, and opened it. "Audrey, wait," Daniel said, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. "The check? Arthur has your check." Audrey paused, her back to him. "You can keep it, Daniel. Consider it a tip for services rendered." She closed the door behind her. The click was as soft and final as the closing of a coffin. Arthur Pendleton chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "Fiery right at the end. Don't you worry, Daniel. Buyer's remorse. She'll be back for that check by Monday." Daniel forced a laugh, the unsettling knot in his stomach slowly dissolving. "Later, she'll realize what she's lost." He strode to the window, the sprawling city unfolding beneath him like a conquered kingdom. He was its ruler. He checked his phone. Isabella had already sent him 3 suggestive selfies. This was his future. He glanced down at the street, 48 floors below. He saw Audrey exit the building. Her beige dress made her look like a drab speck of lint against the gray sidewalk. He watched her stop at the curb. "Come on, Audrey," he whispered, a triumphant smirk playing on his lips. "Call the Uber. Go back to whatever gallery will have you." He watched and waited, and then it happened. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't an Uber. It was a car that didn't so much drive as glide. A custom-built, armor-plated Mercedes-Maybach Pullman S650. It was the color of a starless night, so meticulously polished it seemed perpetually wet. It was a car that wasn't built for mere wealth. It was an embodiment of raw, unadulterated power. It pulled to a silent stop directly in front of Audrey. Daniel's breath hitched. His hand, clutching his phone, froze. A man in a severe black suit, not a driver, but a highly trained security professional, exited the passenger side, scanned the street with a practiced eye, and then walked to the rear door. He opened it for Audrey. Audrey, without looking back, without a moment's hesitation, stooped gracefully and disappeared inside. The man closed the door, returned to the front seat, and the car pulled seamlessly into traffic and vanished. Daniel stood frozen, the blood draining from his face, leaving him pale and clammy. "What is it?" Arthur asked, his voice laced with curiosity, as he approached the window. Daniel couldn't speak. He simply pointed a trembling finger at the street below. The car? What? A nice limo. Maybe she has a richer friend than you thought." "That's not a limo, you idiot," Daniel hissed, his voice cracking with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "That's a Blackwood vehicle." Arthur's smugness evaporated. "Blackwood as in Damien Blackwood? I know the crest," Daniel whispered, his triumphant day turning into sheer, cold horror. "I've only ever seen it in pictures, the obsidian bee on the hubcaps. That was his personal car. Damien Blackwood, the reclusive, almost mythical billionaire, the kingmaker, the man whose firm, Blackwood Capital, was the sole investor Daniel had been desperately courting for Project Oracle, the man who never appeared in public, who was rumored to control half of Wall Street from the shadows. Why? How? His worthless ex-wife, his boring, beige Audrey. She hadn't just left him. She had been extracted. And as the Maybach disappeared around the corner, Daniel Hayes was struck with a terrifying, gut-wrenching realization. He hadn't won. He had just made the single biggest mistake of his life. The silence in the lawyer's office was absolute, broken only by the faint whoosh of the building's climate control system. "Daniel, are you all right?" Arthur asked, his voice now laced with genuine concern. This wasn't part of the victory lap. Daniel stumbled back from the window, his $3,000 Italian suit suddenly feeling like a cheap, ill-fitting costume. He collapsed into the chair he had, only moments before, occupied like a throne. "Get me a drink," Daniel roared, the carefully constructed mask of the cool, collected executive shattering. "It's 11 a.m. I don't care if it's dawn. Get me a scotch, Arthur." Arthur, visibly shaken, fumbled with a crystal decanter on the credenza. He poured a heavy measure of Macallan 25. Daniel seized the glass and downed half of it in one gulp, the expensive liquid burning a trail down his throat. "It's a mistake," Daniel muttered, more to himself than to Arthur. "It has to be a coincidence." Maybe she's a caterer working a party for him. Something. Caterers don't get picked up by the personal S650 Pullman. Daniel, Arthur said grimly, his legal mind already calculating the new, terrifying variables. Those cars are for assets or family. She's not an asset. Daniel slammed the glass down on the table, scotch sloshing onto the mahogany surface. She's nothing. She reads poetry. She looks at paint. He was breathing heavily, his mind racing. She was cheating. That's it. All this time, the quiet, mousy act. She was sleeping with Damian Blackwood. A wave of nausea hit him. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the scale of it. He had been cheated on, not with a tennis pro or a fellow banker, but with a god of their universe. The humiliation was acidic. If she was, Arthur said slowly, sinking into his own chair, then our generous settlement is an insult. A $50,000 tip. Daniel, if she is with Blackwood, she could have taken you for everything. The house, the portfolio, half of your future earnings from Apex. But she signed, Daniel stammered. She took nothing. Why would she do that? People with Blackwood's kind of power don't need to fight over scraps. Daniel, Arthur said, his face pale. They don't take the house. They buy the block. They don't take your portfolio. They short your company. That last word hit Daniel like a physical blow. Apex, Project Oracle, Arthur whispered, connecting the dots. The deal you're presenting next week. The one you need Blackwood Capital to fund. He's the sole investor, Daniel said, his voice a hoarse whisper. It's all him. He's coming to the presentation Tuesday. He's supposed to be there. And you just divorced the woman who is apparently his new protégé mistress? Arthur stood and began to pace. Daniel, this is bad. This is career-ending bad. He's not coming to see your presentation. He's coming to watch you burn. Daniel's mind flashed through the past few months. Audrey's increasing detachment, her quiet nights spent in her study, which he'd assumed were for art history, her sudden lack of interest in fighting. He had seen it all as weakness, as her resigned acceptance of her own irrelevance. He had been a fool, a blind, arrogant fool. No, Daniel said, a new, desperate energy surging through him. No, I won't let her. I won't let him. He pulled out his phone. His new girlfriend, Isabella, was calling. He stared at her smiling, vapid face on the screen and hit decline. Arthur, Daniel said, his voice cold and clipped. I need everything you have on Audrey. What? No, not you. I need a real investigator. I want to know where she's been, who she's been talking to, what she's been doing for the last 6 months. I want her phone records, her bank statements, her everything. I need to know what she has on me. Daniel, that's highly illegal. We've just divorced. Her records are private. Do you have a PI or not, Arthur? Daniel snapped. A discreet one. I don't care what it costs. I need to know what I'm walking into on Tuesday. Arthur hesitated, then nodded. I know a man. Ex-Mossad. Very expensive, very thorough. But Daniel, what if the answer is just, she's with him? What's your play? Daniel straightened his tie, the motion jerky. He was a shark. He'd always been a shark. He just hadn't realized he was swimming in an ocean with a leviathan. My play, Daniel said, his eyes glittering with a toxic mix of fear and rage, is Project Oracle. That project is flawless. It's my masterpiece. It's worth $1 billion, easy. Blackwood is a businessman. He's not going to walk away from $1 billion idea because his new girlfriend has a vendetta against me. He wants to make money. I'm going to show him the money. He finished his scotch. I'm going to nail that presentation on Tuesday. I'm going to nail it so hard Blackwood will have to respect me. He'll see that whatever services Audrey is providing, I am the one who can actually make him rich. Arthur looked at him, unconvinced. And Audrey, what if she's in the meeting? Daniel's face darkened. She won't be. She's a gallery girl. This is way over her head. She's a temporary amusement for him. By Tuesday, he'll be bored, and I'll be the one signing the real deal. He strode out of the office, his confidence a brittle, hollow shell. He spent the weekend in a state of controlled panic. He told Isabella he had to work, that the Oracle deal was at a critical phase. In reality, he was locked in his penthouse reviewing his presentation, but he couldn't focus. Every slide, every data point, every projection was haunted. He kept seeing Audrey's face. Not the mousy, beige woman from the lawyer's office, but the woman who had gotten into that car. A woman he realized, with a sickening lurch, he had never known at all. On Monday afternoon, his private investigator called. "Mr. Hayes." The man's voice was gravelly, accented. "I have the information you wanted." "What is it?" Daniel said, pacing his living room. "It's complicated. The woman, Audrey Caroline, she's a ghost." "What do you mean, a ghost?" "I was married to her for 10 years. I mean that for the last 6 months she has no digital footprint. Her credit card statements show minimal activity, groceries, gas. Her phone records show one friend, a Sarah, and her mother, nothing. But 3 months ago, she opened a high-security, encrypted email account, and she's been communicating with one other account." "Who is it?" Daniel demanded. "The account is a dead end. Encrypted, routed through 3 continents, but the server it's on. It's a private server registered to Blackwood Capital." Daniel's blood ran cold. "So, they were talking for months." "That's not the half of it," the PI said. "You asked what she was doing. I managed to get access to her study. You were right. She wasn't having a physical affair. No hotels, no dinners. She was working. Working on what? Her stupid paintings? No, Mr. Hayes. She's been running algorithms, highly complex predictive market models. I'm talking high-frequency trading level. I've sent the files to you. They're dense. But one file name kept popping up over and over. A master file. Daniel's laptop pinged. A secure file had arrived. He opened it. His heart stopped. It wasn't a file. It was a folder full of data projections, white papers, all his work, all his research. "What's the file name?" Daniel whispered, already knowing the answer. "Project Oracle," the PI said. "Looks like your wife was very interested in your work. Or maybe," the PI added, "it was the other way around." Daniel hung up the phone. He stared at the files. They weren't his files. They were her files. The ones he had found on her laptop 6 months ago. The ones he'd thought were her little hobby, the complex equations she was doodling with. He hadn't developed Project Oracle. He had stolen it. He had stolen it from his wife, a woman he thought was a simpleton. And now, he was scheduled to present that stolen work to the one man in the world who knew he was a fraud. To understand the bomb that was about to detonate in Daniel Hayes's life, you have to understand the woman he had just discarded. Audrey Caroline was not a gallery girl. She was a ghost. She held a first from MIT in applied mathematics and a PhD from Caltech in quantitative financial modeling. By age 25, she was the youngest quant on the most ruthless trading floor in Chicago, building algorithms so predictive they were borderline clairvoyant. She was EV, a legend in the making, a girl who saw the Matrix, and she was burningly, terrifyingly lonely. Then she met Daniel Hayes at a fundraiser. He was handsome, ambitious, and utterly normal. He didn't see her as a brain. He saw her as beautiful. He was dazzled by her looks, not her mind. For Audrey, who had lived her entire life feeling like a freakish intellect in a world of mortals, this was intoxicating. He asked her to marry him. He said, "I want to take care of you. I'm the provider. You don't need to work on that brutal trading floor. Just be with me. We can have a real life." And Audrey, exhausted from a world that tried to quantify her, agreed. She ghosted her old life. She retired at 28. She became Mrs. Audrey Hayes. She took up art history. She ran charities. She learned to be beige, but the engine in her mind never ever shut off. Their marriage for the first few years was stable. Daniel loved showing off his brilliant, beautiful wife, but he only wanted the beautiful part. The death by 1,000 cuts began slowly. It was the dinner parties where she tried to engage with his Apex colleagues about market volatility. "Audrey, don't bore them with your old war stories." Daniel would laugh, patting her hand. "Tell them about the new Picasso exhibit you saw. It was the nights he'd come home stressed about a deal. She'd look at his data and say, "Daniel, your risk model is flawed. You're not accounting for the stochastic volatility in the derivative markets." He'd kiss her forehead. "That's why I'm the VP, honey. You just worry about making the reservation at per se." He didn't want a partner. He wanted a painting. So Audrey retreated. She went back to her hobby. In the study he'd built for her, surrounded by art books, she assembled a rogue server. She created a new pseudonym, Caroline, and began posting complex theoretical models on invitation-only, high-level financial forums. She wasn't trading. She was creating. She built models for pure intellectual sport. She built one that could predict with 98% accuracy the success or failure of tech mergers based on satellite data of their parking lots. She built another that could track the flow of dark money through cryptocurrency. Her Caroline persona became a myth, a ghost in the machine that the titans of finance, men like Damian Blackwood, whispered about. They all tried to find Caroline. They all failed. Then, about a year ago, Daniel started talking about Project Oracle. He was excited, more animated than he'd been in years. Apex is developing a new AI-driven logistics platform. It's the future, Audrey. It will change global shipping. He was, as usual, completely wrong. He was looking at the application. Audrey, with a few glances at his unguarded files, saw the engine. The AI was predictive, yes, but its true genius lay in its ability to analyze and predict supply chain failures before they happened. It wasn't a logistics tool. It was the most powerful market hedging weapon ever created. "It's not about shipping, Daniel," she told him one night. "It's about data. You could use this to short the commodities market. You could hedge against entire national economies. It's a weapon." Daniel had laughed. Genuinely laughed. "A weapon? Oh, Audrey, that is so dramatic. It's a faster way to get sneakers from China. It's adorable you're trying to help, though." He had patted her on the head. That was the night the marriage died. That was the night Audrey Caroline, the quant, woke up. She began her own work. She took the core code of Project Oracle, the part Daniel didn't even understand, and she built the real version. She fed it data he didn't know existed. She ran models he couldn't comprehend. She called her secret version Oracle Prime. 6 months ago, she discovered 2 things in one day. First, she saw an email on Daniel's laptop. He was starting an affair with an influencer named Isabella. He had sent a text to his friend Marcus. "Finally trading in the old reliable sedan for a new sports car. Time to upgrade." Second, she discovered he had been in her study. He had found her Oracle Prime files and he had copied them. He hadn't just stolen her life's work. He'd done it badly. He had copied the top-level folders. He hadn't seen the subdirectories, the root-level failsafes, the true key to the algorithm. He had stolen a high-performance engine but had no idea how to drive it. He was about to present a Ferrari as if it were a Toyota. And in doing so, he was going to crash it. And she saw his plan. He was going to present this brilliant work to potential investors. And at the top of the list, the whale was Blackwood Capital. Audrey knew Daniel. He'd used the success of this deal to finally divorce her. He'd cast her aside, the boring sedan, and ride off into the sunset with his new sports car and her genius. She looked at herself in the mirror. The beige dress, the quiet face, the trophy wife. "No," she whispered. "The trophy is the one who wins." She was Caroline. She was the ghost in the machine. And she knew exactly one man who might be able to appreciate the machine she had built. She didn't try to call. She didn't go through lawyers. She did what she did best. She hacked him. It took her 72 hours, bypassing the most secure private network on Earth. She didn't breach his firewalls to steal. She breached them to deliver. She sent a single encrypted message to the personal terminal of Damian Blackwood. Subject: "Your oracle is false. Mr. Blackwood, you are being courted by Apex Innovations for Project Oracle. The man presenting Daniel Hayes is a fraud. The data he is presenting is stolen. It is also incomplete. He is holding a child's drawing. I am holding the masterpiece. Attached is a single data string. It's the predictive outcome for the Singapore maritime congestion 30 days out. Apex's model will tell you 5% disruption. My model tells you 38% disruption, triggered by a labor strike in Jakarta that hasn't happened yet. You'll know which one is right in 10 days. When you do, you'll know who I am. Caroline. 10 days later, the Jakarta port strike crippled the Singapore Channel. The shipping market went into total chaos. Blackwood Capital, by shorting the right stocks, made $400 million in a single day. 2 hours after that, Audrey's encrypted phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She answered. "Ms. Caroline," a deep, resonant voice said. "This is Damien Blackwood. I've been looking for you for a very long time. Tell me, what do you want?" Audrey looked around the sterile, beautiful house that had been her cage. "I want," she said, her voice steel, "to be free. And then I want to show you what Project Oracle really looks like." Damien Blackwood did not do meetings. He did summons. But not with Audrey. "I can't meet," she had told him on that first call. "My husband is controlling. He tracks my movements." "He tracks your movements?" Blackwood had said, the disdain in his voice palpable. "But he does not, I take it, track your mind. He doesn't even know it exists," Audrey replied. So they began to talk. Every night after Daniel was asleep or out with his new girlfriend, Audrey would descend to her study. Their video calls were encrypted, routed through a quantum network that left no trace. The first call was an interview. Damien Blackwood appeared on her screen. He was not what she expected. He wasn't a slick-suited banker. He was in his late 50s, with a salt and pepper beard and the intense, piercing eyes of a hawk. He wore a simple black cashmere sweater and was sitting in what looked like a library, shelves buckling under the weight of books. "Caroline," he said, a small, rare smile playing on his lips. "So the ghost has a face. And what a face." "Mr. Blackwood," Audrey said, all business. "I assume my model was correct." "It wasn't just correct, Miss Caroline. It was prophetic. You didn't just predict the strike. You predicted the ripple. You saw the wave under the wave. I've had teams of analysts, PhDs from every Ivy, trying to build what you just gave me for free." "How?" So she showed him. For the next 2 hours, Audrey Caroline, the gallery girl, took the most powerful man in finance on a guided tour of Oracle Prime. She didn't just show him the data. She showed him the architecture, the beauty of the code, the elegance of the machine. Audrey revealed the clandestine creation she had toiled on in secret Oracle Prime. She asserted that Daniel's stolen model was nothing more than a rudimentary tool, a blunt instrument. "He believes it's a more efficient way to shuffle boxes," she explained, her fingers dancing across the keyboard, summoning lines of code that painted a vivid picture on the screen. "He fails to recognize the human element. His model is solely focused on logistics. Mine," she paused, a flicker of intensity in her eyes. "Mine predicts chaos." She demonstrated how Oracle Prime could analyze sentiment culled from regional news outlets, cross-reference it with intricate weather patterns, and even factor in the labyrinthine loopholes of labor laws, all to predict, with chilling accuracy, the precise location and timing of the next supply chain crisis. "This isn't merely a logistics tool, Mr. Blackwood," she declared, her gaze burning with a fervor he had only ever witnessed mirrored in himself. "It's a global economic early warning system. In the right hands, it possesses the power to stabilize markets. In the wrong hands, or, as in Daniel's case, incompetent hands, it could shatter them." Damien Blackwood remained silent for a long, drawn-out minute, lost in contemplation. He was staring at Audrey, but his mind's eye was focused on something far beyond her, something far more significant. He was seeing the future unfolding before him. "You're not simply a quant, Miss Caroline," he finally said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "You're an artist, a composer. This is a symphony." "It's a weapon, Mr. Blackwood," Audrey countered, echoing the very words she had once spoken to her husband, the man who was about to relinquish its shattered pieces. "And my husband is about to hand it, or the broken remnants of it, over to you." "No, he's not," Damien stated definitively. "He's about to present it. He craves my money. He's desperate for my validation." "What are you going to do?" Audrey pressed, her curiosity piqued. Damien said, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. I'm going to attend that presentation. I'm going to secure my place in the front row, and I'm going to allow him to present his childish scribble. Audrey's anticipation was palpable. And then you are going to step in and unveil the masterpiece. Her breath caught in her throat. I can't. I'm his wife. It's messy. No, Damien said, his voice firm and unwavering. You were his wife. This isn't a domestic dispute, Audrey. This is a corporate extraction. You are my asset. You are, perhaps, the most valuable asset I have ever encountered. And I do not leave my assets stranded in enemy territory. And so, in the hushed digital darkness, they forged their plan. Phase 1, the divorce. You need to be clean, Damien had insisted, his voice leaving no room for argument. He will undoubtedly attempt to claim your work as marital property. We must sever the tie before we strike. Give him everything he asks for. Take absolutely nothing. A judge will see a simple, amicable split. Let him believe he's won. Let him sign his own death warrant. Phase 2, the extraction. The day you sign those papers, my car will be waiting for you. You will not go to a hotel. You will not seek refuge with a friend. You will be brought directly to my private estate. My lawyers will be there, ready and waiting. You will sign a new contract not as a mere employee, but as a partner and equal. Phase 3, the presentation. Daniel Hayes must be allowed to fail spectacularly on the biggest possible stage. He must be exposed, not simply as a bad husband, but as a fraud, a charlatan. Your grudge, Caroline, is personal. Damien's eyes glinted with a predatory gleam. Mine is with incompetence. I cannot abide incompetence in any form. For the next 2 months, Audrey meticulously played the part of the grieving, broken wife. She allowed Daniel to be generous, acquiescing to all his terms. She even allowed him and his slick lawyer, Arthur Pendleton, to steamroll her, offering no resistance. She packed her drab, beige clothes, the outward representation of her supposed grief. All the while, she was tirelessly refining Oracle Prime, working in close collaboration with Damien's team, seamlessly integrating his vast and unparalleled data infrastructure with her revolutionary engine. The day of the divorce arrived. She walked into that sterile law office, her heart pounding, knowing exactly what awaited her. When she signed her name, Audrey Caroline, it was the resurrection of a ghost, the rebirth of a powerful force. When she walked out of that building, she wasn't simply walking away from a failed marriage. She was walking toward her destiny, toward her throne. As she slid into the buttery leather interior of the waiting Maybach, the world outside faded into silence. The soundproofing was absolute, creating a sanctuary of calm. The chauffeur, a man of few words, simply handed her a chilled bottle of water and an encrypted tablet. A moment later, a video call connected. It was Damien. "It's done?" he asked, his voice betraying a hint of anticipation. Audrey took a long, slow sip of water, savoring the moment. She glanced up at the towering office building, catching a glimpse of the tiny, furious silhouette of her soon-to-be ex-husband on the 48th floor. "Yes," Audrey said, a small, cold smile touching her lips for the first time in a decade. "The asset is secure. Phase 2 is complete." "Good," Damien replied, his voice laced with satisfaction. "Welcome to the game, Miss Caroline. Now let's prepare for Tuesday. It's time to show the world what a real oracle looks like." Tuesday arrived. The Apex Innovations boardroom buzzed with nervous energy. This wasn't just a presentation. It was an event of monumental proportions. The entire board was present, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. The CEO of Apex, a perpetually nervous man named Jacobs, was sweating profusely through his expensive suit. And in the front row, sitting alone, radiating an aura of quiet power, was Damien Blackwood. He had arrived without fanfare, without an entourage of lawyers or assistants. He simply appeared, his presence so imposing that everyone in the room instinctively lowered their voices, intimidated by the raw power he exuded. Daniel Hayes stood at the front of the room, resplendent in a $10,000 Dior suit, a Patek Philippe adorning his wrist. He was the very picture of success, but it was all a carefully constructed facade, a lie built on stolen data and hollow promises. He hadn't slept in 72 hours, his mind racing, alternating between crippling panic attacks and fits of desperate, furious bravado. The damning investigator's report lay hidden in his briefcase, a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. He knew Audrey had orchestrated it, and he knew Blackwood was aware of its existence. But what could he do? Back out now? Admit he was a fraud, a charlatan? No. His only option was to push forward, to double down on his deception. His only hope was that his delivery would be so convincing, so charismatic, that Blackwood would what? Forgive him? See him as the true talent behind the stolen technology? It was a desperate gamble, a fool's errand, but it was the only play he had left. Gentlemen, Daniel began, his voice surprisingly steady despite the turmoil raging within him. And Mr. Blackwood, we are gathered here today to discuss the future. Not just the future of Apex Innovations, but the future of global trade itself. We are here for Project Oracle. He clicked the remote, and the presentation began. For the next 45 minutes, Daniel delivered the performance of his life. He was charming, he was dynamic. He moved around the stage with an energy he had shamelessly borrowed from countless TED Talks. He presented the stolen data, he showcased the incomplete projections, and he laid out the fundamentally flawed business model. He knew it was all a sham, a house of cards built on a foundation of lies. He was a con artist, tap dancing on a minefield, one wrong step away from utter annihilation. He nervously watched Damian Blackwood's face, searching for any sign, any indication of what the man was thinking. But there was nothing, not a flicker of emotion, not a twitch of a muscle. The man was carved from granite, an impenetrable fortress. Daniel finally reached his crescendo. And so, with a modest $500 million investment, he concluded, breathless with a mixture of relief and terror, Project Oracle will not just propel Apex to the top of the S&P 500. It will make us the standard, the Oracle, the company that sees the future before it happens. There was a beat of silence, followed by polite, nervous applause from the board members. CEO Jacobs stood up, wringing his hands anxiously. Thank you, Daniel. A truly visionary presentation. He turned to the silent figure in the front row. Mr. Blackwood, your thoughts? Damian Blackwood stood up slowly, deliberately. He didn't look at the screen. He looked directly at Daniel, his gaze piercing and unwavering. Mr. Hayes. Blackwood's voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but it filled the room, silencing every rustle of paper, every nervous cough. That was a presentation. Daniel's stomach did a slow, painful flip. It was competent, Blackwood continued, walking slowly toward the front of the room, his presence growing with each step, polished, full of very impressive-sounding words. A competent analysis for a first-year intern. The air was sucked out of the room. CEO Jacobs looked like he was about to be sick. I don't understand, Daniel stammered, his voice trembling. No, Blackwood said, his voice laced with disdain. You don't. That's precisely the problem. Your projections are wrong. Your risk model is a joke. Your entire premise is built on a house of cards, waiting to collapse. But the data, Daniel protested, his voice rising in panic. The data is sound. The data is stolen, Blackwood said, his voice dropping to an icy whisper that sent a chill down Daniel's spine. And you didn't even steal it correctly. Daniel went white. I resent that implication. You resent it? Blackwood chuckled, a cold, dangerous sound that echoed through the room. You, Mr. Hayes, are a common thief. A clumsy one at that. You broke into a vault and stole the fake jewels left on display, all while the real treasure was hidden in a safe you didn't even know existed. This is an outrage. Daniel blustered, desperately looking to the board members for support. But they all avoided his gaze, their faces betraying their growing unease. No, Blackwood said, his voice hard as steel. This is a correction. You see, I'm not here to invest in Project Oracle. I'm here to meet its actual architect. He turned and nodded toward the boardroom doors. The doors swung open, and Audrey Caroline walked in. She was no longer the beige ghost, the muted shadow of her former self. She was a supernova, a force of nature. She wore a custom-tailored, razor-sharp suit in a deep midnight blue, a color that accentuated her piercing eyes and highlighted her newfound confidence. Her hair cascaded down her back in sleek, professional waves, framing her face, which was now devoid of any trace of sadness or regret. She walked in on a pair of sky-high Louis Vuitton stilettos that clicked with the authority of a judge's gavel, each step deliberate and powerful. She was flanked by two of Blackwood's top lawyers, their presence adding to the aura of power that surrounded her. Daniel Hayes truly looked at her, for the first time. Not as his wife, not as an ornament to be displayed, but as the brilliant woman she had always been. He saw the PhD from Caltech, he saw the ghost Caroline, and he saw the woman who, in the span of a single week, had completely undone his entire life. Audrey, he breathed, the word a curse on his lips. She didn't even glance at him. She walked directly to the head of the table, her gaze fixed on the board members. "Hello, Daniel," she said, her voice calm, cool, and utterly devastating, amplified by the room's high-tech acoustics. She turned to the stunned board members. "Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Audrey Caroline. For the last 10 years, I was what you would call a silent partner in Mr. Hayes's life. What he just presented to you was a crude summary of my early, unpublished research." She pulled a small, sleek tablet from her briefcase and plugged it into the main console. Daniel's presentation vanished, replaced by an interface so complex and beautiful it looked almost alive, pulsating with data. "What he calls Project Oracle is a toy," Audrey said, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. "What I call Oracle Prime." She tapped a single key, and the screen exploded with data, far beyond the simplistic shipping lanes Daniel had presented. It showed global weather patterns, political unrest, social media sentiment, and commodities futures, all swirling together into a single, predictive algorithm. "Your Oracle predicts a 2% dip in coffee futures next month," Audrey said, addressing the screen but utterly destroying Daniel with her words. "Mine predicts the collapse of the entire crop in Vietnam due to a combination of a late monsoon-driven fungus and a new regional shipping tariff." She looked at the board members, her eyes filled with unwavering confidence. "Mr. Hayes is asking for $500 million to build a faster rowboat." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "AM offering you a nuclear submarine." Daniel was sputtering, his face contorted with a mixture of rage and desperation. She's lying. It's marital property. She stole my idea. Tell them, Audrey. Tell them you were just helping me." Audrey finally turned to him, her face not angry, not triumphant, but impossibly worse. It was pitying, a look that cut him deeper than any insult. "You're right about one thing, Daniel," she said softly. "It is about property, which is why I had my lawyers file the patents for Oracle Prime under my maiden name, Audrey Caroline, 6 months ago, before I even filed for divorce." She gestured to one of her lawyers, who placed a thick, bound document on the table. "I also have a signed, notarized confession from your friend Marcus at the IT desk detailing exactly how you paid him to access my private research from my home server. He was, it turns out, quite willing to trade his testimony for immunity from the wire fraud charges." Daniel Hayes's legs gave out. He grabbed the lectern to hold himself up, but it was no use. He was done. He was finished. In one clean, brilliant, and devastating move, he had been executed. The boardroom, which had been silent with shock, erupted into chaos. CO Jacobs was the first to speak, his face a mottled purple. "Daniel, is this true?" Daniel couldn't form words. He just stared at Audrey, his mind a howling void. "It is." Damian Blackwood's voice cut through the noise, silencing the panicked murmurs. "And frankly, Mr. Jacobs, your company's lack of due diligence is appalling." Blackwood turned his attention to the board members, his gaze cold and calculating. Blackwood Capital is, as of this moment, withdrawing all interest in Apex Innovations. Your stock will be worthless by lunchtime. Panic. Pure, unadulterated panic seized the room. Wait, Jacobs shouted, lunging forward, his face desperate. Please, Mr. Blackwood, Miss Caroline. We didn't know. We can fix this. Daniel, you're fired. You're fired. Security. 2 burly security guards, who had been standing discreetly by the door, moved toward Daniel, their expressions impassive. There's no need for that, Audrey said, her voice calm and commanding, instantly drawing everyone's attention. The issues at Apex are not limited to Mr. Hayes. Your entire R&D division has been chasing a ghost, while your top leadership was, at best, asleep at the wheel. She's right, Blackwood added, a predator toying with its food. However, Miss Caroline and I are not ungenerous. He and Audrey shared a look, not of lovers, but of co-conspirators, of equals, united by their intellect and ambition. Blackwood Capital, Damien announced, his voice ringing with authority, is not investing in Apex Innovations as it's currently managed. The board members visibly wilted, their hopes dashed. Instead, we are making a $5 billion tender offer for a new independent venture to be headed and majority-owned by Miss Audrey Caroline. He let that sink in. A $5 billion offer. This new venture, Caroline Blackwood Analytics, will be the sole proprietor of the Oracle Prime technology. Audrey continued, picking up the thread seamlessly. We will be launching in 90 days. But that's our IP. Jacobs protested weakly, his voice barely audible. Is it? Audrey's lawyer stepped forward, a predatory smile on his face. Our patents predate Mr. Hayes's work by 6 months. We have a clear case of intellectual property theft. We could sue Apex Innovations into oblivion. The damages would be catastrophic. Or, Damien Blackwood said, his voice laced with a hint of amusement, there's another path. He looked at the board members, his eyes gleaming with predatory intent. We will make you a one-time offer. We will acquire your failed Project Oracle division, your engineers, your data, your infrastructure, for the generous sum of 10 cents on the dollar. That's robbery. A board member squeaked, his face pale with shock. No, Audrey said, her voice firm and unwavering. It's a lifeline. We get the engineers we would have hired anyway. You get a small, much-needed cash infusion, and, most importantly, you avoid a public, brutal, and bank-breaking lawsuit that will expose your entire leadership team as incompetent frauds. You'll be saved, barely. Damien Blackwood smiled, a wolfish grin that sent a shiver down their spines. It's a good deal. Take it. The board members were a sea of defeated faces. They knew they were trapped with no way out. Jacobs looked at the guards, then at Daniel, his expression filled with disgust. Get him out of here. Daniel was frozen, paralyzed by shock and despair. The guards grabbed his arms, their grip firm and unforgiving. No, you can't, Audrey. Audrey, please don't do this. He was being dragged out, his $10,000 suit crumpled, his face a mask of pathetic terror. I love you. I'm sorry. I'll do anything. Audrey Caroline watched him, her expression unreadable. Her ex-husband, the man who had dismissed her, cheated on her, and tried to steal her genius, was now a broken man, reduced to begging at her feet. She watched him being dragged past the water cooler he'd once boasted at, bragging about his supposed brilliance. She watched as his new life, his new girlfriend Isabella, his fancy car, his inflated ego, all evaporated in an instant, leaving him with nothing. He was at the door, his voice cracking with desperation. Audrey! She looked at him, her eyes devoid of any emotion, and she said nothing. She simply turned back to the board members, her expression unreadable, and addressed them with quiet authority. Now, gentlemen, let's talk about the terms of your surrender. Daniel Hayes's screams echoed down the hall as the boardroom doors slid silently shut, sealing his fate and her future. His new girlfriend, Isabella, who had been waiting in the lobby, eager to celebrate his supposed big win with a weekend getaway to St. Bart's, saw him being hauled out by security. His face tear-streaked, his suit disheveled, the sheer animal panic in his eyes. She quietly slipped her phone from her purse, blocked his number, and called a new Uber to a different billionaire's party she had been invited to. Daniel was alone, utterly and completely. He was the one left with nothing. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The Wall Street Journal headline screamed, "The Apex Collapse. A worthless wife, a stolen oracle, and the rise of Caroline Blackwood." The story was brutal, detailing, with leaks from a dozen terrified Apex employees, how Daniel Hayes had not only been a fraud, but an incompetent one. He was a laughingstock, a cautionary tale whispered in the corridors of power. Apex Innovations stock lost 80% of its value in a single day. By the end of the week, the board had accepted the lifeline offered by Caroline Blackwood Analytics, selling their failed Project Oracle division for a pittance. 6 months later, the cover of Forbes magazine featured a striking image of Audrey Caroline and Damian Blackwood, with the title, "The Ghost and the King." They were not posing together, but standing on opposite sides of a vast, glass-walled office overlooking all of Manhattan. Damian was in the background, shrouded in shadow, watching over her. Audrey was at the front, bathed in light, looking directly at the camera, her expression not smiling, but focused, determined. It was the look of a person who does not play the game but defines it. Caroline Blackwood Analytics became the single most valuable private company in the world. Oracle Prime hadn't just predicted the market. It was moving it, shaping it, controlling it. Audrey had used it to predict, and in doing so, help mitigate a global famine by rerouting food supply chains 3 months before a devastating drought hit. She wasn't just a CEO. She was a global force, a power broker whose decisions impacted the lives of millions. Her life was now a whirlwind of private jets, secure compounds, and meetings that decided the fates of nations. She had become, in every sense, the power that Daniel had only ever pretended to be. And Daniel Hayes lived in a nondescript one-bedroom apartment in Queens, his dreams of wealth and power shattered. The penthouse was gone. The Patek Philippe was gone. The bespoke suits were gone. He was drowning in lawsuits, each one a nail in his coffin. Apex was suing him for fraud, seeking to recoup their losses. Marcus, the IT guy he had coerced into stealing data, was suing him for coercion, seeking to profit from his downfall. And Audrey, in a single, final, cutting move, had sued him for the theft and commercial use of her intellectual property, seeking not money, but a judgment, a permanent stain on his reputation. He was unemployable. The name Daniel Hayes was a poison pill in the financial world, a warning to any potential employer. He worked as a consultant, which meant he spent his days sending out resumes under assumed names, all of which were immediately flagged and rejected. He was a ghost, a real one, haunting the fringes of the world he had once believed he would conquer. One rainy November afternoon, Daniel was buying instant noodles at a dingy corner bodega, his meager meal a symbol of his reduced circumstances. He was wearing an old, stained coat, the fabric threadbare, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow with despair. He walked out onto the street, fumbling with his change, when a car slid to a stop in front of him. It wasn't a Maybach, like the one he had once aspired to own. It was a custom-built, bulletproof Rolls-Royce Phantom, a symbol of unimaginable wealth and power. The license plate simply read Caroline. The back window lowered silently, revealing Audrey inside. She was on a video call, speaking in rapid-fire French to someone on her screen, her voice confident and commanding. She looked up, her eyes scanning the street, and she saw him. She saw the noodles. She saw the stained coat. She saw the shell of the man she had once married. Daniel's heart leaped with a desperate hope. He saw an opening, a chance for redemption, a flicker of possibility in the darkness. Audrey. He stumbled forward, the rain plastering his thin hair to his scalp, his voice cracking with emotion. Audrey, please wait. The car didn't move. She was looking at him, just looking, her expression unreadable. Audrey, I'm so sorry. he begged, his voice filled with remorse. I didn't know. I swear. I didn't know what you were. I was an idiot. I was nothing. Please, Audrey. I have nothing. I'm starving. Audrey continued to look at him, her face, which had launched 1,000 ships, still and impassive. She felt nothing. Not anger. Not revenge. Not even satisfaction. Just an emptiness. A vast and echoing absence. She finally spoke, her voice clear and quiet through the armored glass, cutting him to the bone. That was always the problem, Daniel. He stopped, confused, his heart pounding in his chest. What problem? You just didn't know. She pressed a button. The window began to rise, slowly and inexorably, sealing her off from him, both physically and emotionally. No, wait! He shrieked, banging on the glass, his voice filled with desperation. Audrey, help me. For God's sake, help me. I'm your husband. No, Audrey said to herself, her voice barely audible, as the glass sealed him out of her life forever. You're not. She turned to her driver, her voice regaining its usual composure. To the heliport, James. We're opening the Singapore office. I want to be in the air in 10 minutes. The Rolls-Royce pulled away from the curb, its motion as smooth and silent as a shark gliding through the water, leaving Daniel Hayes alone on the sidewalk in the rain, clutching his instant noodles. He watched the car disappear, a black speck in a sea of yellow cabs, a symbol of the vast gulf that now separated them. He was the one left on the curb, the one who was worthless, the one left without a word, without a future. While she, the ghost he had tried to erase, the woman he had underestimated at every turn, went on to rule the world he had so desperately tried to claim. And just like that, Audrey Caroline didn't just get revenge. She became the power, the force to be reckoned with. Daniel thought he was divorcing a mouse, a meek and submissive wife. He didn't realize he was unchaining a dragon, a creature of immense power and intellect, who would rise from the ashes of his betrayal to conquer the world. A story that proves the best revenge isn't just living well, it's building an empire, and the person everyone underestimates is often the one holding all the cards. What did you think of Audrey's ultimate power move? Do you think Daniel got what he truly deserved? Or was Audrey too cold in that final scene? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this story of justice and a trophy wife turning the tables, do me a huge favor. Hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it.